The wind sweeps across the hills of Bethlehem, carrying the soft bleats of sheep. A young boy with a sling by his side watches the horizon, unaware that heaven has already chosen him for a destiny greater than any king before him. His name is David, son of Jesse, the youngest of 8 brothers, overlooked and unseen. Yet, what man ignores, God notices, and his eyes are fixed on the heart of a shepherd. 1 Samuel 16:11. Far away, the prophet Samuel mourns the failure of King Saul. God's voice pierces through his sorrow, commanding him to fill his horn with oil and go to Bethlehem, for there he has chosen a new king among Jesse's sons. 1 Samuel 16:1. Samuel hesitates, fearing Saul's wrath if he discovers the mission, but God provides a way, instructing him to take a heifer for sacrifice, concealing a divine secret beneath the veil of worship. As Samuel arrives in Bethlehem, the elders tremble, unsure if his visit brings blessing or judgment. His calm reassurance, "I come in peace," sets the tone for a moment that will shift Israel's history forever. Jesse's sons are called one by one, tall, strong, and noble. Samuel's eyes rest on Eliab, the eldest, whose appearance seems fit for a king. But God whispers, "Do not look at his appearance, for the Lord sees not as man sees." 1 Samuel 16:7. One by one, the sons pass before Samuel, yet the Lord rejects them all. Confusion fills the prophet's heart until he asks, "Are all your sons here?" Jesse hesitates. There is one more, the youngest, tending sheep in the fields. His words carry little weight, as if David's presence could not possibly matter. But Samuel insists, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he comes." The air stills, and expectation fills the courtyard. 1 Samuel 16:10-11. Moments later, David enters, his face ruddy, his eyes bright with innocence and courage. The Spirit of God moves within Samuel, confirming what heaven had already decreed. "This is the one," God whispers. Without hesitation, Samuel lifts his horn of oil and anoints David before his brothers. The oil glistens on his hair like liquid sunlight. The crowd watches in silence. None can fully grasp what just happened. But as the oil flows, the Spirit of the Lord rushes upon David with power and purpose. 1 Samuel 16:13. From that moment, David is no longer just a shepherd boy. Though the world still sees him as ordinary, the heavens now call him king. Meanwhile, Saul remains on his throne, unaware that God's favor has shifted. The spirit that once guided him has departed, leaving him tormented and restless. 1 Samuel 16:14. As night falls, David returns to his flock. Unaware of the full weight of his calling, the stars above shimmer like divine witnesses to a secret only God and Samuel understand. He strums his harp softly, a melody that rises to the heavens. It is both a song of peace and a whisper of destiny. The same hands that soothe the sheep will one day wield the sword. The same boy who sings to the stars will command armies. In the quiet fields of Bethlehem, a king is being shaped in solitude, not in palaces or temples, but in the wilderness of faith and humility. Each note of David's harp is a prophecy, a prelude to the songs that will fill generations. His voice carries both the tenderness of a shepherd and the courage of a warrior. As the night deepens, the Spirit of the Lord lingers with him. It will never depart, for David's story is only beginning. In the royal halls of Gibeah, King Saul sits in darkness. His crown gleams, but his heart is restless. The spirit that once empowered him has left, replaced by torment and despair. 1 Samuel 16:14. His servants watch helplessly as the king wrestles with unseen forces. They whisper among themselves, seeking a cure that no physician can provide. One servant remembers a shepherd from Bethlehem, skilled in music and wisdom, brave in spirit, and favored by the Lord. 1 Samuel 16:18. Saul commands, "Bring him to me." And so, a messenger rides into the hills of Bethlehem to summon the young shepherd who has already been anointed in secret. David stands before Saul, harp in hand. Bowing with respect, the king's gaze studies this youth, unaware that the boy before him will one day wear his crown. As David begins to play, the melody flows through the chamber like light piercing through storm clouds. The evil spirit trembles, and peace fills Saul's heart once again. 1 Samuel 16:23 Saul's face softens. Stay with me, he commands. Let your music be my comfort. From that day, David became the royal musician and armor-bearer to the troubled king. Day after day, David's harp becomes a weapon of light against Saul's torment. Yet behind every note lies a divine irony. The servant is already God's chosen king. Saul grows attached to David, calling him my son, not realizing the prophecy unfolding before his very eyes. 1 Samuel 16:21. In the quiet of the night, David reflects on how quickly his life has changed from shepherd's field to royal court. But though his surroundings are grand, his heart remains humble. He often returns to the fields when he can, tending sheep and singing beneath the stars. It is there that he learns the rhythm of faith and the melody of leadership. Each time David plays for Saul, the darkness withdraws, but only for a moment. The spirit that once dwelt in Saul now rests upon David, and the contrast grows sharper with time. Scene 13. In David's music, heaven whispers of destiny. In Saul's silence, fear begins to grow. The court begins to notice David's grace and favor. The soldiers speak of his courage, and the servants speak of his wisdom. Jealousy, silent and unseen, begins to stir in Saul's heart, but for now, David's harp keeps the peace. The melodies echo through the palace halls like divine lullabies, soothing the spirit of a man soon to become his enemy. David does not yet know that his greatest trials will come not from giants on the battlefield, but from the king he serves. As the harp strings hum in the dimly lit hall, the sound becomes a fragile truce between a chosen shepherd and a fallen ruler. Heaven watches as two destinies intertwine, one fading, one rising. Like the setting sun and the morning light meeting on the horizon, the Spirit of the Lord continues to strengthen David, preparing him for challenges greater than music or service. And though Saul sleeps peacefully tonight, darkness is gathering beyond the palace walls. A new chapter of battle and glory is about to begin. The valley of Elah trembles with the roar of Israel's enemies. The Philistine army stands in defiance, their champion towering like a shadow of death across the field. 1 Samuel 17:4. Goliath of Gath steps forward, his armor gleaming like bronze fire under the morning sun. His voice shakes the earth as he mocks Israel's soldiers and blasphemes the name of God, day after day. For 40 mornings and nights, Goliath challenges anyone brave enough to face him. No move, even Saul, the tallest in Israel, stays silent in fear. 1 Samuel 17:10-11. Back in Bethlehem, Jesse sends his youngest son, David, to deliver food to his brothers on the battlefield. The shepherd boy carries bread, cheese, and faith. As David approaches the camp, he hears the giant's insults echo through the valley. His heart burns, not with fear, but with righteous anger. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine, David cries, that he should defy the armies of the living God? His voice, though young, cuts through the cowardice of seasoned warriors. 1 Samuel 17:26. His brothers rebuke him, calling him proud and foolish, but David's courage is not pride. It is conviction born from years of trusting God in the wilderness. Word of his boldness reaches Saul. The king summons David, skeptical but desperate. The boy stands before him, confident yet humble. Let no one lose heart because of this Philistine, David says. Your servant will fight him. 1 Samuel 17:30. To Saul studies him. You are only a youth, he replies, and he has been a warrior from his youth, but David's faith is unmoved. I have killed the lion and the bear, David explains. And this Philistine will fall the same way, for the Lord who delivered me before will deliver me again. Saul finally nods. Go, and the Lord be with you. He offers David his royal armor. But the boy refuses, saying, I cannot wear what I have not tested. 1 Samuel 17:39-40. David walks to the brook and selects 5 smooth stones. In his hand, the sling feels like an extension of his faith, simple, precise, and unstoppable. Across the valley, Goliath laughs at the sight of the youth walking toward him. Am I a dog, that you come to me with sticks? He roars, his voice dripping with scorn. David's reply silences the armies. You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. 1 Samuel 17:45. The crowd holds its breath. The shepherd takes his stance. The giant lifts his spear. The valley freezes in suspense. David swings the sling once, twice, 3 times. The stone flies, cutting the air like a divine arrow. It strikes Goliath's forehead. The sound echoes like thunder. The giant collapses face first into the dust, his armor clanging against the ground. The battlefield erupts. The Philistines freeze in disbelief while Israel bursts into shouts of victory. David runs forward, seizes the giant's sword, and cuts off his head. What began as mockery ends in triumph. The boy who once guarded sheep now stands as a hero of Israel. The army chants his name, David, David. But the boy knows the victory belongs to God alone. As the dust settles, Saul watches in awe. He sees the same divine presence that once guided him now resting fully on another. David lifts his eyes to heaven. The same God who strengthened his hand against beasts has brought down a blasphemer with a single stone. From the fields of Bethlehem to the valley of battle, David's journey is marked not by strength but by faith. And as Israel celebrates, destiny begins to move again. The shepherd has become a warrior, and soon a crown will begin to whisper his name. The sun rises over the hills of Judah, and the sound of celebration fills the land. Israel rejoices, for the Philistine threat has been crushed, and David's name is now sung across every tribe. Women dance in the streets with tambourines and lyres, their voices echoing through the city walls. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. 1 Samuel 18:7. The song that was meant to honor both men becomes the spark that ignites a storm. Saul's smile fades. His heart, once full of admiration, now twists with envy. What more can he have but the kingdom? Saul mutters under his breath. The joy of victory turns to bitterness in the heart of the king. 1 Samuel 18:8. From that day, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. What began as admiration becomes obsession. The Spirit of the Lord, once Saul's strength, now stands against him. David continues to serve faithfully, unaware of how deeply Saul's envy burns. His harp still brings peace to the king, even as hatred festers behind the throne. One evening, as David plays before Saul, a shadow falls over the king's face. The spear in his hand trembles. Rage overtakes reason. With a sudden cry, Saul hurls the spear toward David. The weapon whistles through the air, striking the wall where David's head had been a heartbeat before. 1 Samuel 18:11. David leaps aside and flees the room. His heart races, but his faith holds firm. The same God who delivered him from lions and giants will not abandon him in the court of a jealous king. Saul's servants exchange nervous glances. None dare speak of what they have seen, but all know the truth. The king's madness has begun. Yet David returns to service the next day, still loyal, still humble. His courage now lies not in battle, but in restraint. Everywhere David goes, he succeeds, for the Lord is with him. His wisdom earns him favor with the people and fear from Saul. 1 Samuel 18:14-15. Saul tries to trap him by offering his daughter Merab in marriage, hoping David will fall in battle for the bride's price. But David, ever humble, refuses. Who am I to be the king's son-in-law? He says. Then Saul's younger daughter Michal falls in love with David. Saul sees an opportunity to ensnare him again and agrees to the union, demanding a dangerous price, 100 Philistine foreskins. 1 Samuel 18:25. David accepts the challenge, not out of pride, but faith. He returns with double the number, proving once again that no scheme of man can stop God's anointed. Saul is forced to give Michal to David. Yet, the more the Lord blesses David, the deeper Saul's fear grows. Every victory David wins becomes a mirror reflecting Saul's failure. Every cheer for David sounds like judgment to the fallen king. Saul's counselors plead for calm, but the king's eyes are dark. He must die, he whispers, consumed by a hatred that no harp can soothe. Jonathan, Saul's son and David's closest friend, hears his father's plan. Torn between blood and loyalty, he vows to protect the friend he knows God has chosen. In secret, Jonathan warns David of Saul's intentions, to meet under the open sky, swearing an oath of brotherhood that will echo through eternity. 1 Samuel 20:16-17. Tears fall as they part, each man bound by destiny on opposite sides of fate. Jonathan returns to the palace, and David flees into the wilderness. As he disappears into the hills, David looks back at the city lights of Gibeah. Once a home of peace, it has now become the heart of betrayal. He has lost his position, his safety, and his peace, but not his purpose. The wilderness that once shaped him will now protect him again. The harp falls silent, replaced by the sound of the wind over the desert stones. God is not finished with David. For in every exile of the faithful, the Lord prepares the next victory. The shepherd will soon become a fugitive, and the fugitive, a legend. The wilderness swallows David like a shadow. The man once praised in every city now hides among caves and cliffs, hunted by the very king he served. 1 Samuel 19:1-2 Night after night, he moves in silence. The stars his only companions. The harp that once brought peace to Saul now comforts the fugitive. As he sings psalms of survival, fear whispers, but faith answers louder. David knows that the same God who anointed him in secret still walks beside him in exile. In the court, Saul rages. His soldiers scour the land. But David always seems one step ahead, protected by unseen hands. At Naioth in Ramah, David seeks refuge with Samuel, the prophet who first anointed him. Together they pray, and when Saul's men arrive, the Spirit of God falls upon them, stopping their pursuit. 1 Samuel 19:20-21 Even Saul himself comes after David. But as he enters the presence of God, the king collapses. Overcome by the Spirit, for a brief moment, even madness must bow before divine power. David flees again, heading south toward Nob. There, he meets Ahimelech the priest, who trembles at the sight of him. David requests bread for his men and a weapon for his defense. Ahimelech hesitates, then offers him the consecrated loaves and a familiar blade, the sword of Goliath. 1 Samuel 21:8-9 The irony is powerful. The same weapon that once threatened him now becomes his protection. David leaves, carrying both hunger and history in his hands. But Saul soon learns of this meeting. His paranoia deepens into cruelty. He orders the death of the priests of Nob, accusing them of conspiracy. David hears the news and falls to his knees in anguish. He cries out to God for mercy, vowing to protect the innocent who suffer because of him. Others begin to gather around him, the broken, the desperate, and the loyal. 400 men unite under his command, not as soldiers of a throne, but followers of a promise. 1 Samuel 22:2 In the cave of Adullam, David becomes more than a fugitive. He becomes a leader. By the firelight, he teaches his men courage, faith, and restraint. They call him captain, but David knows he is still only a servant of the true king above. In the stillness of night, David writes psalms that speak of trust amid betrayal and strength amid sorrow. His words become the heartbeat of every soul that seeks refuge in God. Meanwhile, Saul's pursuit grows relentless. His spies move through every village. But God's providence covers David like a hidden shield. Once, Saul nearly traps David in the wilderness of Maon. But just as the soldiers close in, a messenger rushes to Saul. The Philistines are attacking, Saul retreats, and David escapes. 1 Samuel 23:27-28 Each escape is not luck, but timing. Divine timing. Every narrow path and hidden cave becomes a sanctuary under God's hand. David begins to see that the wilderness is not punishment, but preparation. His faith grows stronger than the sword, his patience sharper than the spear. Though hunted and homeless, he is never hopeless. The same God who called him from the sheepfold now shapes him through suffering. In solitude, David learns that kingship is not found in crowns, but in character. Each day, he chooses mercy over vengeance, humility over pride, and obedience over fear. These choices forge him into more than a warrior. They make him a man after God's own heart. 1 Samuel 13:14 Even his men, hardened by exile, marvel at his restraint. They follow him not because of wealth or power, but because they see in him something divine. And as the firelight flickers in the caves of Adullam, David lifts his eyes toward the stars, whispering prayers to the God who sees him still. For though he is hunted on earth, in heaven his name is already written beside a crown. The wilderness breathes heavy with silence. Saul's army moves through the desert of En-Gedi, searching the rocky cliffs for David and his men. 1 Samuel 20 for 2:1-2. Hidden deep inside a cave, David's men crouch in the darkness. The faint sound of footsteps approaches, echoing against the stone. Then, to their astonishment, Saul himself enters the cave, alone. He does not know his enemy waits in the shadows. David's men whisper fiercely, "This is your chance. The Lord has delivered your enemy into your hand." Their words burn like temptation. David grips his blade, his heart pounding. One strike could end years of running, fear, and pain. But another voice speaks, quiet, divine. He creeps forward in the darkness, silent as wind through grass, instead of taking Saul's life. David cuts only the corner of his robe. 1 Samuel 20 for 2. For as Saul leaves, unaware, David's heart trembles. Guilt pierces him, not for what he did, but for what he almost did. He turns to his men, eyes fierce with conviction. "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed." 1 Samuel 20 for 2:6. His followers stare in disbelief. Mercy, in their eyes, looks like madness. But David knows, true strength is not in the sword, but in surrender to God's will. Moments later, David steps out of the cave into the blinding sun. He calls out, "My lord the king." His voice echoes through the canyon. Saul turns, startled. David bows low, holding the torn piece of robe high in his hand as proof. "See, my father, how I spared your life today. I have not sinned against you, yet you hunt me to take my life." 1 Samuel 20 for 11. For the first time, Saul is silent. The man consumed by jealousy now trembles at the mercy shown to him. Tears fall down his face. "You are more righteous than I," he admits. "For you have repaid me good, though I repaid you evil." 1 Samuel 20 for 17. The soldiers watch in awe. Two kings, one chosen by men, one chosen by God, stand face to face, and only one carries peace. David's mercy disarms Saul more than any weapon could. For a moment, even hatred bows to grace. But Saul's repentance fades quickly. His jealousy returns like a shadow that refuses to die. David withdraws again to the wilderness, knowing the test will come again. Yet his heart is lighter. He has proven that the Anointed does not need to seize the throne, God will give it in his time. Later that night, David writes another psalm. His words rise like incense. "The Lord is my deliverer, my rock, and my fortress." Psalm 18:2. Through mercy, David learns what kingship truly means, to rule one's spirit before ruling a nation. His men begin to understand, too. They see that God is shaping their leader through every act of restraint, every moment of obedience. Even the wilderness feels different now. The same caves that once held fear now echo with faith. Saul may still have the crown, but David carries the calling, and that cannot be taken by force. As the stars rise over En-Gedi, David gazes upward, whispering, "My times are in your hands, O Lord." The fugitive walks away, not victorious by human standards, but crowned in heaven by the unseen hand of God. Time passes, but Saul's heart remains unchanged. Though David spares him once, jealousy burns anew. The king continues to chase shadows across the wilderness. 1 Samuel 26:1-2. One night, David learns that Saul's army has encamped nearby. A reckless courage rises in him, not to kill, but to prove once again that mercy reigns over vengeance. With his trusted companion Abishai, David slips silently into the enemy camp. Spears glimmer in the moonlight as they move between sleeping soldiers. There, beside Saul, lies his spear and his water jug. Abishai whispers, "Let me strike him once, and he will not rise again." 1 Samuel 26:8. But David shakes his head. "Do not destroy him. Who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" 1 Samuel 26:9. They take only the spear and the jug, then slip away into the night, unseen and touched. From a distant hill, David calls out to the camp at dawn. His voice carries across the valley, waking the soldiers in confusion. He lifts the spear high for all to see. Where is the king's spear and the water jug that was by his head? Saul stirs from his sleep and recognizes David's voice. Again, shame grips him. He cries out, "I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will harm you no more. 1 Samuel 26-21. But David knows better. His mercy is complete. Yet his trust remains only in God. He leaves Saul in peace but not in fellowship. Time passes. Saul's madness deepens, his reign weakens, and the Philistines press hard against Israel's borders. On the mountains of Gilboa, the battle turns deadly. The Philistines strike Saul's sons, Jonathan among them, the friend David loved as his own soul. 1 Samuel 31-2. Wounded and surrounded. Saul falls upon his sword. The king chosen by the people dies in despair, while the one chosen by God waits in silence. 1 Samuel 31-4. When word reaches David, his heart shatters. He tears his clothes and weeps for Saul and Jonathan alike. His song of lament fills the air. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. To Samuel 1:25. There is no triumph in his voice, only sorrow. He refuses to rejoice in the downfall of a man who once wore the crown. David honors Saul as the Lord's anointed even in death. His grief is not only for a fallen king but for a nation in need of healing. Then, in the quiet after the morning, a message comes from God. The time of hiding has ended. The men of Judah gather at Hebron. Their faces carry both respect and hope. They pour oil upon David's head, saying, "You shall be king over the house of Judah." To Samuel 2:4. The promise given long ago in Bethlehem now begins to unfold in full. David bows, not as a conqueror, but as a servant. He knows that every victory, every tear, and every trial has led to this moment. Years of exile have forged in him the heart of a shepherd king, one who leads with humility, justice, and mercy. From the ashes of Saul's fall, a new kingdom rises, not built by power, but by patience. As the trumpet sounds through Hebron, the people rejoice. A new dawn breaks over Israel, and the anointed king takes his throne. Yet in David's eyes, there is no pride, only gratitude. For he knows this truth: no man crowns himself. Only God can lift the humble and establish his chosen one. The days of exile are gone. David now reigns in Hebron, his throne established by God's own hand. To Samuel 5-3. From shepherd fields to palace halls, every step has carried him closer to the purpose written before his birth. Soon, all the tribes of Israel come to him, saying, "We are your bone and your flesh." United, they crown David king over all Israel. To Samuel 5-1-4. The kingdom flourishes. Jerusalem becomes his capital, the city of David shining as the heart of a nation once divided. David builds a strong army, but his true strength lies in his worship. His harp fills the palace with songs of thanksgiving to the Lord. The Ark of the Covenant is brought into Jerusalem with dancing, trumpets, and joy. David leads the celebration himself, clothed in humility rather than royal pride. To Samuel 6:14-15. His wife, Michal, watches with scorn, unable to understand that the king dances not for glory, but for gratitude. David answers her gently, "I will celebrate before the Lord. His joy belongs not to men, but to the God who lifted him from obscurity." Peace settles over Israel, yet within David burns a desire to build a house for God, a temple of stone to honor the Lord's name. But through the prophet Nathan, God speaks, "You shall not build me a house. Your son will build it, and I will establish your throne forever." To Samuel 7:12-13. David bows in awe. Though he will not build the temple, his lineage will carry an everlasting promise, the royal line that will one day bring forth the Messiah. As years pass, David's reign is marked by victories and failures, triumphs and tears. He defeats mighty armies, expands Israel's borders, and restores the nation's faith in the living God. Yet he also stumbles. His sin with Bathsheba brings judgment and sorrow into his house. To Samuel 12:9-10. But even in failure, David does not hide. He falls on his face in repentance, crying, "Create in me a clean heart, O God." Psalm 51:10. That prayer becomes his legacy, not perfection, but repentance, not pride, but humility. Through every storm, God's covenant remains unbroken. The throne of David stands as a symbol of grace, not merit. In his old age, David reflects on his journey. From shepherd boy to giant slayer, from fugitive to king, every moment has been written by the hand of God. He gathers his son Solomon and blesses him, saying, "Keep the charge of the Lord your God, walk in his ways, and you shall prosper." 1 Kings 2:3. Then, with peace in his heart, David rests. The psalm that began in the fields of Bethlehem ends in the courts of a king. But his legacy does not die. Generations later, another son of David will be born in Bethlehem, carrying the same anointing, the same spirit, the same divine promise. This son will not rule with a sword, but with love. His throne will never fall, and his kingdom will have no end. Luke 1:32-33. Through David's line, salvation enters the world. The shepherd who became king becomes the shadow of the King of Kings, from the caves of Adullam to the gates of Zion. One truth remains eternal: God exalts the humble and fulfills every promise in his time. And so, the story of David closes not with a crown of gold, but with a legacy of grace. The anointed shepherd king lives on through every heart that trusts the hand of God.